All right, come on,
But
let's
yeah,
do it, man. We
man.
got
If y'all fucking with this content, man, leave a like, comment, subscribe. Fuck, we coming with nothing but bangers. Fuck. What you got to say, Door9?
not too much to see how these young niggas built this operation, this turnpike. You feel me?
This turn for free my nigga Shooter D. My nigga Shooter D. Free my
This
nigga Shooter.
turnpike.
Let's get into it.
Every package that I sent was completely untraceable. I could ship whatever I wanted to ship, whenever I wanted to ship, because I had a mail store. I was in the mail business then. I was 18 years old, and I trafficked over 8,000 pounds of marijuana. From my shipping store, it literally sold itself. Our goal was to get these big bales of marijuana on the right truck. I can manipulate the shipping records however I wanted. According to the records, I just had a lot of packages from different customers. I had no idea that they had started putting tracking devices and started watching all the drivers. Now they're focusing on me. I had gotten myself into something that I wasn't gonna be able to get myself out of.
Right there. Right.
My name is Frederick Hudson. I was born in Brooklyn, New York.
Hey,
There was a certain energy about New York. It was mainly just us and my mother at the time, and she was always very entrepreneurial, taking care of us. My mom's always been known in the community as a great chef. What she did was she bought 6 tables. She turned our living room to a dining room. And every Sunday, people would come after church, and they would eat in our living room. I don't know if the New York Health Code would have called it a legitimate business. You know, I'm pretty sure we didn't have a restaurant license, but, you know, my job was to always keep the music playing, and it used to be like Kenny G and jazz in the background, and working in the kitchen, helping her out, whether it be her running a restaurant out of our living room or doing catering jobs. She was just always very entrepreneurial, and that's what I saw growing up, and that's, you know, my first exposure to that.
Nigga eating a TV dinner.
We moved to Florida when I was about 13, so I was split between growing up in New York, and then most of my childhood was in St. Petersburg, Florida. Florida's a completely different environment for me. So, you know, in New York, it was this melting pot. I saw all different types of people. It wasn't until I got Florida where I really saw races being divided. We moved into my grandma's house, which is this tiny 3-bedroom where somehow my mom, my sister, my brother, my aunt, her husband, and my grandma, and a couple cousins all lived in this house. When I go there now for Thanksgiving, I'm like, how on earth did we all fit?
Fries, take one.
Frederick Hudson is my little cousin. I've known him all my life. Raised him. He always had drive,
Raised him.
smart, funny, just a happy person.
I looked up to Fry. I used to steal his clothes and wear to school, and he would have, you know, the nice car and the big rims and the jewelry. I just saw him around, and I never actually saw him go to work, but he always had money.
You know, we bought jewelry. I had a $50,000 chain, BMW, Cadillac Escalade.
The wheels in my head started turning like, what the hell are you doing? For some people, the image of success may be someone who was an attorney or a lawyer or a doctor, someone who went to college. For me, my image of success was the neighborhood drug dealers, which the biggest one at the time was my cousin Fry.
I gave him that drive that he got. Well, me and D gave him that drive.
Yeah, I'm cool.
You look like
D is
a
Derek.
booger.
We call him D. Him and Fry were best friends. D's very low key. The only thing that gives him away is when he smiles, he has a mouthful of gold. But other than that, he's extremely low key.
I've been selling weed since I was actually probably like 14 years old. And I always watched my mama. She struggled, she worked so hard. So in my mind, I always said, I'm gonna make a lot of money, I'm gonna take care of my mama. So That was the easier way out to the drug game, so. Freddie looked at us because he seen all the cars and, you know, the jury, the girls and stuff like that, and the houses that we used to live in. He's like, how you get all these cars? Then that's what I told him. I said, one day you'll get it.
My mother used to always warn me and say, you know, don't get involved. But at the end of the day, that was my cousin. So, you know, when your peers around you all are living a certain way and you're not, then it's very easy to say, well, I'm just gonna do what they're doing.
Freddie came to me and tried to get some weed for me to give him to sell. I wouldn't give it to him at first because I didn't want him in that. When I didn't give it to him, he went somewhere else and got it.
I had another group of friends that Fry didn't know. Say, yo, you know, can I get some? And I think I had a couple $100 or something. So he gave me 3, 4, 20 sacks or something like that. Extremely small, extremely petty. But for me, you know, I thought I was Pablo Escobar, right? So it was it was a big deal. So everyone that I was around, they were all drug dealers. They're surprised that I was 16 just dabbling in it and not a lot sooner because these folks, you know, they was taking care of themselves, you know, at 13 years old. I took it to school with me and, you know, I started talking to people and trying to sell it. And it just took me forever to get rid of $200 worth of weed. Either I'm doing something wrong because I'm clearly not doing what Fry's doing because my $200 grew to $350 or something. And it's just like, that's not really worth it.
Freddie was just getting away the weed. He ain't know nothing. He ain't know what was what or what. He just getting it away.
It's hard to just get out there and just do that kind of stuff. You got to really know what you're doing. You got to know people.
I didn't have a network, just didn't have any margins. I got a job at the St. Petersburg Yacht Club. Yacht Club, I don't know how else to describe it, but just a whole bunch of old rich white people. And they would go there and they would eat their prime rib steaks and play their games, whatever old people do. I would work all day and I would make $20 that day. By the time I would get my check after working a week, it would be like $100-something, and that wasn't gonna get me what I wanted to wear. That wasn't gonna get me the car that I wanted to drive. At the end of the night, when my shift was over, I would go back to my homeboy's Trap. Trap was a place where you would sell your drugs. So this was a place where in the neighborhood,
How
it
you
was your
working for
storefront.
rich motherfuckers for $20?
That's when I got my first crack cocaine from him. Tried my hand at selling that to see if that would make more money.
He moved from weed to crack, and he thought that was gonna be better for him. But I quickly told him, that ain't the way to go. Crack tore down some good people. That's hell right there.
I was about 16 years old when I was testing my hand at selling crack cocaine. It literally sold itself. I didn't feel good about the people that I saw. I didn't feel good about the way they looked. I didn't feel good about the way they were acting. The image of someone strung out on crack cocaine just was, in my mind, a horrible image. When I would see the people that I would talk to and stuff, they didn't look like that. So there was one time I was sitting in the shop with my homeboy Josh. It was probably about 10 o'clock at night, and this guy walked up and he pulls a gun, and as I come down from my seat to sit up straight, the gun's pointing right at my head, try to basically get me to give him money. My friend's crazy ass starts tussling with him and ends up getting shot in his ass. He just yelled, you know, shot, he grabs his ass and stuff. The dude runs, right? So we took him to the hospital. He got patched up. It was a crazy night where it just seemed like this doesn't make sense. That was probably my last time sitting in that trap after that. And after that, actually, is when I actually started seriously considering there has to be a better way. The next most successful person in my family was my Uncle JT, and he was in the Air Force. That was another contrast image of success. So you have Fry on one side, and then you have Uncle JT on the other. You know, both having BMWs, both having nice cars. I said, okay, you know, the Air Force could be interesting. After high school, I went and did the ASVAB test, which is basically the assessment test for the Air Force. In my mind, I told myself that I was gonna be a pilot, but you know, after I took the test, I was like, no, you're actually gonna be an electrician. This is how this works. So we'll tell you what you're gonna do.
When Freddie joined the Air Force, I was proud of him, you know, because somebody in the family got to make it out.
From that point, I didn't do anything illegal. went off to basic training, then went off to tech school. And then after tech school, they assign you whatever your base you're going to be based at. And I ended up in Las Vegas at Nellis Air Force Base. Alfonso was also assigned there, and we just became friends.
I was in the Air Force about 4 years when I met Frederick. Frederick was one of the first people that I met in Las Vegas working on F-16s.
He worked in avionics, which was the navigational equipment on the F-16. And because I worked as an electrician on F-16, our jobs overlapped a lot.
We happened to be from the same city.
He's from Tampa, I was from St. Petersburg.
You know, he's black. There wasn't too many black guys in our shop. He was sharp, very sharp dude.
My first 6 months or so, I just mastered it. I mastered what I was doing. I mastered my job, and it just wasn't enough. I was always interested in more. And I said, okay, well, what else can I do? The next logical thing to me was, I just want to start a business. I got the call like I usually do. We meet, he gets in the car with me. He put the duffel bag in the back seat. But as I reach back and I start feeling it, he pulls out a gun. I was 18 years old, and I just want to start a business. I started looking around, I started going online and started, trying to figure out what kind of business I can get into. I said, well, why don't I just shortcut the whole starting a business part and just buy one that's existing, and then I'm gonna be rich and I won't have to do anything. So I set my sight on the gas station. And I said, I'm gonna buy this gas station. The guy who owned it, I'll never forget his old white guy. And I don't know why he would take my calls. I don't know why he would talk to me, but he did. So long story short, I got the price down to about 100,000. Like, where the hell am I gonna get $100,000 from? And the next week, guess who shows up? D.
I'm here. I told Fred, I said, I'm gonna be out there in Vegas. I said, I might need you. So one day I just happened to get out there, and that's when Fred came and picked me up, and I stayed on the Army base with him in his apartment. And that's when I introduced him to everything. That was the day Freddie got involved with me in the weed game.
When D showed up in Vegas, he started telling me a little bit about what he was doing.
Back then, all the weed was coming out of Tucson. So I said, well, I'm gonna go to Tucson myself so I can cut all the middle people out, and I just go out there and find my own plug. So that's what happened. That's how I started the operation. I went out to Vegas, got a house out there, and that was my headquarters. I wasn't gonna fly into Tucson because I knew everybody was in Tucson, and Tucson was already hot. I'm gonna try to stay off the radar. I was just flying to Vegas like I'm just hanging out in Vegas.
He would get weed from Vegas. His connect would meet him and bring 30, 40 pounds at a time. He would buy it and then ship it back to Florida. He would fly back to Florida to get there before it arrives, and then he would collect it, and he would just ship it to an address, and he would make sure that he's at that address to receive it. It made sense. That's why I wasn't able to make money when I was in St. Pete, because I'm at the end of the food chain. You have to really be at the beginning in order to make the money, and that's where all the money's being made. I told him about my gas station idea, and D always encouraged that. He was like, yeah, that's a great idea, because he always would remind me, I'm not trying to do this shit forever. This shit is the means to an end. This shit is not cool. We do this shit, we get out, and we get out. He said, we can get $100,000 together. He said, that's doable.
I ain't really bringing me in at first, but I just showed him what I was doing.
I was just there observing a lot, watching Derek manage it. I moved off the base, we got an apartment together, and it was cool for me because I had a roommate that was only there sometimes. The apartment turned into the stash house. Money would be stashed there, the drugs would be stashed there, and it just started growing from there. And that's when I started to get more involved and ask more questions. He would start showing me different aspects. Okay, this is how I wrap it up, and this is what we do. So I started just learning. I basically was interning. The way it worked is you would have your connect, the person that actually is getting the shit from Mexico. His driver would take it from him and deliver it to whoever his point is. They'll bring in duffel bags, and inside the duffel bags will be these big bales of marijuana. We would buy this dish detergent, and we would wrap the weed up with plastic wrap to make it real thick, and then we would cover it with dish detergent.
Then you just pour the liquor stuff all around it, and you just smother it around, and then you wrap it a couple more times.
And then wrap it again to seal it, and then what that would do is it would kill the smell.
But I know one thing, we definitely use a lot of dish detergent.
It would smell like, clean dishes versus 30 pounds of marijuana, which was good. I mean, that's what we wanted.
It's just one big room with just a bunch of blocks of weed just stacked to the ceiling with all the stuff that we use.
We would be hours in there. And I mean, my arms would start itching, like, you know, you're rolling in grass. I started having allergic reactions to it. And I hated it, but for me, it was exciting because I was starting to do the math and I was starting to figure out a 30-pound bale that I'm just wrapping up was actually worth on the street $30,000 minimum. As that math started to click in my head, I started seeing, okay, well, this is actually something very valuable. I actually said, you know, I want to get in. And, you know, that's when it really started to expand.
And then from there, everything just happened to come together. And
I didn't know what Frederick was doing. I didn't know what D's business was. I never asked, really, knowing Frederick. I think he tried to keep me away from what was really going on. He didn't want to kind of bring me deep into what he was actually doing at the time.
D started getting tired of flying to Vegas every couple weeks. It turned into, all right, I'm gonna be there this week. I'll be there next week. I'll be there in 2 weeks. I'll be there next month. And then those bigger time periods, whereas he started to see that I picked up pretty quick. And then it got to the point where he trusted me to handle it all. Because our volumes got so big and the amount that we was getting got so high, I decided that it made more sense for me to go get it in Arizona myself. And I would just drive out there and meet with the driver and then bring it back. I bought a car and I had special shocks put in so that it can carry a lot of weight without dipping down and looking all weird. And then I would get my military outfit and hang it in the back window like I was coming home from work or something because they had bases there, and then I would drive. I was young, I was 18. In this one case, I got the call like I usually do, saying that, you know, we're ready for you. It was a different driver that I hadn't dealt with in the past, but I didn't think nothing of it because that wasn't the first time that happened. We meet, he gets in the car with me. His car with the load in it is across the way. We start talking, we count the money together, so the money's there, so cool. He gets out and he goes and gets the duffel bag, and he basically tries to just put the duffel bag in the back seat and without getting back in the car. But I insist that he puts it in and gets back in the car just because I wanted to be able to put my hand behind me and kind of at least touch it and feel it because I didn't have a scale. This was all on the road. So this is at this point, this is all on trust. Usually what would happen is you would have a scale, you would take it out, you would weigh it, and then you do the exchange that way. This is after I've been dealing with the same Connect for a while. So, you know, there was a level of trust that if this is a driver, there's a level of trust there that was extended from, you know, my relationship with the Connect. But as I reached back and I started feeling it, it felt a little bit small, but it was very heavy and it felt very dense. So I said, this kind of feels weird. I put the money on this side of me and he's on the passenger side just so he can't reach it. I turn it all around and I pull it over to the driver's seat and I put it in my lap. And as I'm opening it up, he pulls out a gun. I can manipulate the shipping records however I wanted. I just had a lot of packages going to Florida from different customers. It allowed me to ship whatever I want to ship, whenever I want to ship.
I didn't realize how much of a risk that he was actually taking.
And then from there, it took off.
He basically tries to just put the duffel bag in the back seat and without getting back in the car. But I insist that he puts it in and gets back in the car just because I wanted to be able to put my hand behind me and kind of at least touch it and feel it. But as I reach back and I start feeling it, I realize that inside this duffel bag is nothing but beans wrapped up to feel like a bale of marijuana. And as I'm opening it up, he pulls out a gun. I grab it and we're sitting there in the parking lot of this damn mall. I'm tussling with him with his gun in his head. Car's rocking with two grown-ass men in there doing this. I end up getting the gun out of his hand. He bails out of the car and they pull off. You know, I almost got. This motherfucker just tried to get me. And I would have had a bag of fucking pinto beans and been $20,000 less after I drove 4 hours. And I was just mad as hell about the attempt. But then that's when we started meeting the actual Connect face-to-face. From the time that I actually was more active, it grew from, you know, the 20, 30 pounds a week to 100 to 200 to 300 pounds. That happened over about 6 months while I was still in the military. You know, during 9/11, the armed forces really grew. They hired a lot of people. They brought a lot of people on. Once all that started dying down, they started basically doing budgetary cuts and basically started downsizing. So they offered, even though you had a 4-year enlistment period, if you want to get out early, you can. And you can keep your honorable discharge, keep all your benefits. So I signed up for it because now I was making more money outside the military than I was in. And I was just full-time in a drug game at that point.
It's like a tier type level of hierarchy when it comes to, to selling drugs. So I didn't realize how high he was up on that tier, and I didn't realize how much of a risk that he was actually taking. Like I didn't know that at the time.
I would go down there and meet with the Connect and then take it to the stash house and then box it up and ship it out. Vegas is only so big. It got to the point where I went to every single damn UPS, FedEx, DHL store in the city, places like Office Max, Office Depot, anything that had those shipping centers in it. One of the concerns that we started to get is that people see me all the time because as it started getting more and more volume, I ran out of stores to go to, and I tried to not go to the same store within the same week because I didn't want to hit the person that was at the counter because they would either steal it or have the cops there. I would make the return address up and the ship to address. The only thing that mattered was getting the zip code right and the street right. The numbers didn't matter because we always had people on payroll on the actual trucks. Our goal was to get the package on the right truck. You know, I always would go in there with hats and I would try to put on the most corniest, squarest outfit I could to be unassuming. Always pay with cash, never use a card, and just all those very simple things to make sure that every package I sent was completely untraceable.
And then once it hits that plane, that's when you know it's real. It's gone, because the next day you be on your thing tracking it. Once you know that it's on the plane, you be like, now the next thing is when they get to the next hub, you just hoping it get on that truck.
Fry would have his team of people that he would distribute to, and D would have his team of people that would distribute to.
We're splitting between 3 guys, so everybody making money. Fry might send for 700 pounds, I might send for 800.
That would then basically filter down to whoever's on the actual street level.
The rush, it was a rush for me back then, you know what I'm saying, just to be able to do all that stuff.
And they would send the money back to me. We would buy DVD players and VCRs, and we would take all the guts out and then just basically pack the money in the case, screw it back shut, and pack it back in a box, the original packing, and then ship it. Each DVD, VCR have 50 to 100,000 in it. That's how we would get the money back from Florida, and then sometimes I would even fly down to Florida and then fly back with it on me. And then I would go meet with the Connect to then re-up the next amount and then do the same process all over again. But
Hey, chat.
as a
I ain't gonna lie, man. If y'all want part 2, give me like 10 likes for
I think I want that part too, man.
that part 2 looking comp. I ain't gonna lie, man. But we out, for. See y'all in the next one.